2030 was on record the hottest year that we will ever see in the world, but also the coldest one that we will ever experience.
From government perspective and policy perspective, India is moving very fast.
We gave them an offer about 2 years ago that we'll reduce your energy consumption of all your hospitals by 20% guaranteed, with no effort from your side.
I am Vamsi Krishna from Kosher Climate. We started Kosher Climate about 12 years ago. We are one of the leading companies working globally and developing projects in the area of carbon credits. Many of you might already know what carbon credits are. These are basically attributes, you can say tradable instruments which are basically certified and provided by some specific boards. And through carbon credits, a number of corporate companies are able to generate additional revenue for their operations. And we will see more examples, in our conversations. And also many farmers and many communities get benefited from the revenue of carbon credits. Examples being like, some of the farmers following improved agricultural practices, and also managing forests. We are present in many countries, about 12 countries, and mainly in India, Southeast Asia, and in Latin America as well. We are very proud to be working with hundreds of thousands of farmers globally and helping them to basically get more revenue and help their livelihood. This is about us. We would start with a conversation and learn more about each of the panelists. I would like to start with Ms. Shruti Narayan. Ms. Shruti Narayan, can you very briefly tell me about what C40 does, what is your role, and how does it impact the cities and better planning? To you, please.
So C40 is a global non-profit that works with cities on climate action. We believe that cities are the center of climate change, with nearly 70% of emissions being responsible by cities, and having a significant impact on also the global GDP. We really think that cities is the place where we need to make an intervention. So C40 works across the world. We have 100 cities that are members of C40, and we work with many other non-C40 cities as well. And I am the regional director of South and West Asia, so I look at the delivery of and working very closely with political governments, institutions, and partners in accelerating climate action. In India, we have 6 cities that are members of C40, and we have been working very closely with these cities, along with the subnational and national governments. We launched the climate action plan for Mumbai, Chennai, and very recently for Bangalore. And we are working with all of these cities to see what are the high impact actions that we can support them on. We have a very active program on zero, freight electrification, looking at how we can reduce methane, which is another very significant contributor to climate change. We're also working on energy decarbonization. So that's a quick background on what we do with cities.
Yeah, Ms. Shruti, if I have to ask you, you mentioned that cities come and possibly get a membership, get basically part of C40. What are the driving factors for any city to come and say be a member? Why would that happen?
It's a great question, and it's one that I'm asked all the time. So, it's the membership of C40 is completely voluntary, and we don't invite cities to be members, neither do we charge money. This was an initiative that was started, many years back by Michael Bloomberg, who was the mayor of New York, along with Ken Livingstone, who was the mayor of London, with the intent that they want to bring cities together to really look at how cities can, commit an ambitious target on climate action. So why cities want to become a member of C40 is because they join this very, almost an exclusive group of cities that are globally leading the discussion, the discourse, and the commitment on climate action. And also I want to just highlight that while we don't charge cities any membership, right, we hold cities responsible for the commitment. So every year we have something that we call the leadership standards, which we review the city's performance. And these standards are around delivering action on ground. So it's just not about talking about climate action, right? It's about what is the city doing on ground, how is the city leadership inspiring action, what are some of the very measurable outcomes. And we, if the city does not deliver this on an annual basis, there are times when the city's membership becomes inactive and it can get annulled.
Yeah, thank you very much. Shruti, also, see, it's unimaginable how a city operates, right? Because it should be so complex, there should be so many components of it, and there should be so many sources of improvement, emissions, and a number of other factors which are extremely complicated. What do you think, as a layman, if I have to ask, what do you think are the key areas any city, irrespective of their geographic location, maybe look at primarily to improve upon as a first, very first, low effort, high result initiatives?
So, while every city obviously contextually is very, very different, the profile of greenhouse gas emissions across cities indicates through evidence that energy efficiency through buildings, mobility are two very key drivers that can impact the way city functions. And the other important aspect is resilience. We have seen, I'm sure everyone knows the news and the record, 2030 was on record the hottest year that we will ever see in the world, but also the coldest one that we will ever experience. And that just indicates how hot the climate is becoming. And we cannot just focus on mitigation. So it's important, while we're looking at energy and transport, we start looking at risk and resilience. And some of the key low-hanging actions that cities can take, and I'm sure my co-panelists are going to talk about, is how are we designing buildings, because in Global South, almost 2/3 of buildings are still to come, which gives us a significant opportunities in shaping new buildings, but also looking at existing buildings and really looking at the design of building and their reliance on cooling. And I know Arjun is going to probably talk about that, but cooling is going to become a significant load on our grid, right? So how are we going to tackle that? How are we making buildings more comfortable to live in, and really going to the basic principles, the fundamental principles of how they're being designed? Same for mobility. There is a lot of narrative right now on electrification, but we can't just talk about electrification without understanding where this energy is going to come from, because you're just increasing the reliance on grid. So we need to start looking at renewable energy sources in addition to energy efficiency, but also coming back to the basic premise of mobility, which is walkability. How are we making our cities walkable and reducing the reliance on private vehicles, making public transport more accessible, more equitable? We need to make it more equitable so that more people in the population shift to this. And then from a resilience perspective, it is very important, because in Global South, we're going to continuously see cities getting added. How is the urban planning happening that is ensuring that we are able to keep the blue-green infrastructure intact? So how are you building and ensuring that you're not occupying your water bodies, changing the cycle of water completely, over-paving? We have a problem, right? Floods and then drought. And this primarily happens because cities don't have flood management systems in place that can actually utilize the rainwater that's coming. And these are decisions that we have to start making now, because all of this impacts health. This was also the COP, this COP was, we were discussing, was groundbreaking in many ways. But one of the things that this COP did was had the first health day included, where it really brought forward that we cannot ignore that climate is impacting health and vice versa. There are people dying because of heat, air quality, and other issues, and vector-borne diseases are increasing because of the changes in climate. So all of this is important for cities to take into account.
Thank you very much, Shruti. We would definitely come back and continue the discussion. I would, Ms. Kiran Sarkar. Mahindra and Mahindra is one of the largest automobile companies in the country and has been growing very, very rapidly. It's surprising at the pace at which automobile in India is growing. And also, I happen to be traveling a lot, and I was hearing that Mahindra is also starting up in Southeast Asia. And possibly has already started, I believe, in Cambodia and Laos, which is extremely interesting to learn that our domestically grown companies are doing so well. This also makes me think that there must be such humongous scale of operation that Mahindra must partake and carry out. How do you look at sustainability? How do you look at ESG? As the head of ESG, what are the things that bothers you, and what are the things that you definitely like to take care of before any kind of initiative is taken in Mahindra?
Yeah, thanks, Vamsi. That's a big question. I'll just try and answer it. So, for at Mahindra, so we are a auto and tractor manufacturing company actually, and so good part is for the XUV 700 we still have a 1 year waiting. And that's a good part, right? So the consumer had changed post-COVID, right? So earlier when we launched the vehicle, the demand was not that much. But now if you see, the people are moving from passenger vehicle to SUV. So SUV's demand has increased. We talk a lot about EV, but still in India at least, even if by 2030, there will be still 70% ICE vehicles present. So the scale is increasing both ICE and EV together. At Mahindra, what we are trying to do and what we believe is right. So there are 3 kinds of emissions if you consider it any company, right? So there is a scope 1, scope 2, which are the direct emissions, and then there are scope 3, which are the indirect emissions. So for any manufacturing company, the scope 3, like for us, the scope 3 emissions are more than 95%, and the scope 1, scope 2 emissions are around 3 to 5%. What has happened now is people have worked out action plans, ways, strategy commitments in scope 1 and scope 2, which is something that you can do because you can influence it, right? You can take decisions and you can do it. So we have certain commitments of renewable energy 100% by 2030. Then we have said improving energy productivity by 100%. So all these commitments, net zero water, net zero waste, for our manufacturing operations. So we are working diligently and we will achieve those targets. But the real problem is when we talk about scope 3. And just for the audience, scope 3 means for us, when we sell the vehicle runs for 150,000 kilometers. So the emissions created for those 150,000 kilometers is entire part of scope 3 for us, Mahindra, because we are producing the vehicle. So that's a huge part, and the solution is we talk about EV only, but the fact is EV are getting charged again with the thermal power, right? Because in India, again, the ratio of renewable thermal is around 25-75, I'm not sure, or 30-70, not more than that. So EV at this point of time are reducing emissions by 20 to 30% and not more than that. So the solution is actually charging. The charging infrastructure has to be there, and the charging has to happen with renewable power. That's the real thing, when the real thing happens. So what I believe is we are focusing on certain aspect, moving from greening our operations to now decarbonizing the industry. So working very closely with our supply chain. We are building up a projects with supply chain or programs with supply chain to reduce direct emissions of suppliers, which are our indirect emissions. So we are building program similar to Schneider Electric's net zero project. So we're building a program with supply chain, net zero supply chain, what we call it. Then again, we are working on the material circularity aspect very closely. So there is a upcoming legislation. I'm a part of a technical committee. We're working with Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. So the extended producer responsibility legislation for vehicles. So the draft regulation talks about the targets. So for example, for us in F26, we have to take back 20% vehicles which we sold in F06, like 20 years back. So 20 years for passenger vehicle and 12 years for commercial vehicle. So you get the vehicle back, recycle the vehicle and use that back in the process. So that's the kind of a law which is coming up in India. So from government perspective and policy perspective, India is moving very fast. If you look at the how SEBI is moving on business responsibility and sustainability report, so SEBI talks about 75% value chain also. So for us, for OEMs like top 150 listed companies, we also have to disclose on 75% upstream and downstream value chain. So that's a huge target actually for us. And neither SEC, neither in Europe, those kind of targets exist. So India is moving very fast, and obviously top companies, lot of leadership is also moving very fast, but there is still a gap between the commitment and the real actions happening. So I think that's the area where everybody has to work, and a lot of collaboration is required for that.
Thank you, Kiran Sarkar. I have a follow-up thing to ask you. I believe that EV is growing very rapidly, and Mahindra is also at the forefront. Currently, I believe also contributing significantly to the EV sales within India. As EV grows, I see that there are two key things. One is, of course, related to GHG and emissions, as it's practically zero, and then is the cost factor. And cost factor, basically cost of running, possibly is the driving factor for the sales as well. What do you see? What do you think would be because it is also with a lot of complications with respect to battery, with respect to a number of other components, and you are already mentioning that you also target to recycle 20%, 25% of the vehicles very, very soon. So what do you think? Because EV is something which nobody has seen. There is no precedence. There is no track record of what kind of challenges it would face. Have you already figured out, and what do you think possibly would be the biggest challenge eventually after the lifetime of the EV?
So for EV, the biggest challenge will be in after sales. So we have done certain studies that why the EV penetration is still low in India. Of course, there are availability per se also, so supply demand both are low. So what we have observed is two things. People are not confident about EV because, people compare two-wheeler, four-wheeler in the same direction, right? So battery fudge jayega and all these things, right? But typically in four-wheeler that doesn't happen because there is a very safe battery pack, etc., etc. But still that believability is not there. Second thing is, for ICE vehicles, people are used to it. You know what to do with the vehicle, right? For EV, people don't know, right? Another thing which has changed in vehicles is there's a lot of electronics digitization has happened in the vehicle per se, be it ICE or EV. So now the skill set required for after sales service is going to be changed. And now if you look at India, of course the charging infrastructure is a challenge, that's one challenge, but second challenge is also the after sales. So whether the mechanics are now have skilled enough to service the EVs, right? Second thing is how the entire battery servicing happens, right? So we have also benchmark studied a lot of other countries like Europe, Austria, how it is happening, right? And we are figuring out a way also from a battery servicing after sales point. So major challenge is going to be there. Second challenge is of course on the battery front because importing battery and then lithium ion battery has a lot of connotations of its own, right? So the conflict mineral, the social issues related to that. But I think EV the battery chemistry is going to change very, very soon. It's already changing, of course, but it's going to change very, very soon. And I'm not sure near future, I cannot say, but we will have battery manufacturing happening in India also. So a lot of those aspects will be taken care of. And the battery recycling. So end of life of battery or battery recycling is another aspect. How to recycle, more than a recycle, how to recover the materials of the battery and reuse back in the process, because it's like battery apne nikala feka, it's waste of lot of material, right? So those are the basic challenges actually with EV.
Ms. Kiran, would you want to highlight any of the specific things that Mahindra is currently doing, which you are very proud of as a company? Specifically in the field of ESG, I believe there are initiatives that are being taken care of. Anything specifically you would want to highlight, please?
Yeah. So we are working a lot on the renewable energy front, right? So we are trying to ensure, so we have launched our first EV, which is XUV400. What we are trying to do is, when we are manufacturing EV, we are ensuring it is manufactured in a water positive facility with 100% renewable energy. So that's how we want to manufacture the EV, because we also want to reduce the manufacturing emissions of the EV. Second part, what we are working on the material circularity. So how much recycled material we can use in a vehicle. So we are, commodity wise, we are working like how much aluminum we can recycle, how much polymers we can recycle. So we call it as a design for sustainability, and we have given a different brand identity to EVs. We call it as a born electric, and we also call it as a infinite possibility or circularity, right? So we work on a lot of design for sustainability aspects, the recycling aspects within the material, so that we don't use a lot of material to manufacture the EVs.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kiran Sarkar. We will, Mr. Arjun Gupta. Would you like to very quickly, just of course, brief everybody about what exactly is the kind of work that you undertake? I understand it is in energy efficiency. Would you, if you have to define it in the layman's language, what exactly do you help with? What your company does, if you could please.
Thanks. So before I talk about Smart Joules, can I just request the audience to give some applause to these two ladies who are working amazing work in climate action. Very inspiring to hear from them. Thank you. So I work in energy efficiency, which is basically we all waste energy, right? At the same time, we are talking about renewable energy and all. About 30-40% of whatever energy we consume is total waste. So what Smart Joules does is reduce the waste and make money for our customers and make money for us from that reduced waste. So I think that's at the heart of it. I'll give an example of my colleague over here who's sitting, Mahindra. One of your biggest manufacturing facilities is Mahindra Research Valley, MRV in Chennai. There the cooling system consumes about 10 crores worth of energy. So my team went there and found a way to cut that by half. 5 crores a year in reduced energy cost by investing only 2 crore rupees in an upgrade, which is both an upgrade of technology, a core technology of cooling and automation. So, that's the kind of thing that is available, and it's an opportunity to take profitable climate action. I think that's very important. People need to profit from climate action. That's how it's going to become the norm, and that's the cause that we champion.
Thank you very much for that brief. Arjun, if I have to ask you, I believe that retrofitting possibly older equipment definitely improves the efficiency or anything. What is the single largest industry globally, if you think that possibly has the least amount of effort that can go in, and it will have the best results possible? Maybe is it like the old aluminum factories? Which industry has the greatest potential when it comes to energy efficiency?
Well, that's a tough question. Industry that has greatest potential. Okay, so if I look at it, the largest amount of energy is consumed in cement and steel. So, those two industries have tremendous potential to reduce energy. But if I look at it a different way, if I look at buildings, right? They have concrete, they have cement, they consume energy across their lifetime. So if you're able to make buildings extremely sustainable, and I don't mean only energy efficient, I also mean consume less concrete, use different materials, right? Use less steel. Then, buildings alone consume about 30-35% of the carbon space that we have. So I think thinking about buildings in a way, the built environment in a way which is sustainable at its core, the materials that are used, the way it's built, and also the use of energy in the lifetime of a building. I think that's probably one of our, tied with mobility in terms of the amount of impact that can be made.
Interesting. Thank you very much for that. You also were mentioning, we were having a conversation, and I also understand that one of your clients had registered one of the projects, and they are also able to get the benefits from carbon credits, sale of carbon credits by saving electricity. Would you like to just briefly explain it a little bit, what you did and what kind of energy are they saving, and how they are getting the carbon credits as well?
Right. So this story is about one of our clients, which is Apollo Healthcare, right? Apollo Hospitals. All of us must be knowing Apollo Hospitals, right? Largest healthcare chain in India. They have about 70 hospitals, which are large. So we work with all their large hospitals in India. We gave them an offer about 2 years ago that we'll reduce your energy consumption of all your hospitals by 20% guaranteed, with no effort from your side, like from Apollo. No investment, nothing. All the work will be done by us. And in a couple of years, we've been able to bring it down by more than 20%. So now this reduced energy consumption not only brings direct reduced cost for the customer, it also produces carbon credits. Because now the carbon footprint of these hospitals has reduced substantially. Of the order of around 40,000 tons of carbon emissions have been reduced, which would have otherwise been there. So what we did is we started thinking about registering these carbon credits with an agency called Vera. They basically certify that this carbon reduction is real. Without this project, it would not have happened. So we've gone through that process, and now we have carbon credits that we hopefully will be selling and making more profit, not just from the reduced energy consumption, but also from selling the positive environmental attribute, which is the carbon credit. And I think your company does some work in there. So.
Oh yes, it's very, very interesting. A lot of people have no idea about carbon credits, and also the work that you do basically is the fundamental thing which carbon credits needs. It is just saving energy and essentially avoiding emissions. And that's absolutely is eligible for carbon credits. We do a number of projects similar to this, like all the industries, retrofitting activities, waste to heat recovery kind of projects, and all the projects in cement industry, aluminium, steel and everything, all of these projects, retrofitting or change of feedstock in industries, all of these are eligible for carbon credits, and almost all major industries have got it. But what you are doing particularly with, say for instance, a hospital or a corporate company which has multiple offices, that is the next phase of everything, because that is where the real scope is, right? As Shruti was also mentioning, particularly in cities, it's not only about just the transportation, commute and everything, it's also about, you know, building better spaces and let people walk. And in these aspects, I believe there is absolutely great potential within energy efficiency as well. Shruti, I would want to just come to you and ask you about, you have been working with governments, and governments come and talk to you, your institution, and then try to get a member of the C40, right? In the whole process, is there a plan that C40 provides them? And does it also include governance or advices on taxation? Because I believe taxation is one of the key important things which drives businesses to do interesting things or also sometimes avoid it. Like governments were allowing depreciation benefit for solar and wind power projects long back. And that is the period in Tamil Nadu you might have seen such a huge surge in investments into renewable energy, right? The same fashion we are looking at transportation at this point of time. EV exists. Mahindra's vehicles, I'm sure, are taxed at 100%, including GST and everything. I'm not against tax, by the way. I absolutely think the country needs it. We must tax it in the same fashion. But does your scope involve, or do you see any benefit in it? Because you might have worked in different geographies and countries. Does it really impact, or, you know, in any way, overall, say subsidies or taxation benefits from government?
You're putting me on a spot. So if I take a step back, see, obviously finance, and like, you know, Arjun, you said that, you know, ultimately it boils down to the money, right? If you're able to prove the bottom line, saying what kind of impact finance will have, you're able to drive a decision, right? So in the discourse of climate, and when we work with cities, how cities will mobilize funding, either through their own books or taking loans or other interesting instruments like green bonds, etc. Finance is very important. So what we do is we don't tell cities what to do. We empower cities with data to make the decision. So couple of things, you know, for example, we are working very closely with cities right now on a project that we call climate budgeting. It was actually done by city of Oslo and New York, and we are right now working with the city of Mumbai on that. And climate budgeting is a governance tool. It basically is a framework in which the government looks at its municipal budgeting from the lens of climate. So every rupee that it's allocating in its budget has a lens of climate, because what we think is that we are at a point now which is a moment of reckoning, right? If we don't understand that we really need to take action now, it's going to be too late. And if cities continue to spend money on their municipal projects and then look at climate separately, it's never going to come together and align. So climate budgeting is a way we believe that cities can start looking at the lens of climate for every spend. So for example, if you are creating a nature-based solution, is that climate or is it municipal infrastructure? So we start combining that. Now when we come to taxation or incentives, there could also, it's either ways, right? You can incentivize something or tax something. So obviously these are levers in which you can make and create those signals to the larger public in a city that they should do something or they shouldn't do something, and these work. I can give you an example. In city of Shwane, for example, in Africa, they have this project where they look at what kind of perviousness your plot has, and there is a taxation or there's a component. If your permeability is not very good, you will get taxed. And it basically goes into a fund that the city has where they then use that fund to create nature-based solutions, right? So it's a way a city is able to also create and facilitate financing for itself to look at how they can create projects on climate action. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did almost. Yes. Thank you very much, Shruti. So, Kiran, would you like to specifically point out how what do you think how the market is driven with respect to ESG, specifically talking? Do you think our customers currently are aware, and the decision making to purchase or make a purchase or an investment is also because consumers at a consumer end do consider ESG as well. As an automobile manufacturer, what is your take on it? Do you think it has become important today for the consumer?
So people are buying currently EV if they have running of vehicle which is more than 1 lakh kilometer, or if they are buying a second vehicle. So clearly still there is a cost which matters most with the vehicle. The young consumer, I should say, little bit is moving towards EV just for the cause of EV, but the percentage is very less, right? So that's the market scenario currently. Still the cost will drive most of the EV, and again we are not able to reduce the cost of the EV because we all are importing battery and we are highly dependent on China for the battery. So that's the reason what is happening currently is if you look at the ICE vehicle, the cost of EV, the same apple-to-apple comparison if I have to give it, at least 30-40% more cost, right? Plus people want a lot of features, etc. So the cost again increases a lot because then you spend certain amount, then so you expect this feature should be there in a car. So a lot of digital features are required in a car, right? So you have to switch off on car from your mobile, lot of things, fancy things, right? So all this will require a lot of cost, and the cost is increasing, and again the battery cost is very huge. So there is no clear why people are not buying car, because it's very less percentage.
Thank you very much. I have seen some of the people that I know. It's very interesting to see some of them at least are still investing in an EV, even when their running is possibly not as much as the break-even cost would demand. So that is very interesting. And also, just a follow-up question: what do you think? Because we have seen solar power projects in the year 2012 used to cost like 16-17 crores per megawatt, and today it costs like close to 3.5-4 crores per megawatt on a larger scale at least. It was less than 8 years that the price dropped by 5 times. And today if we see one of the very surprising things is EVs have so less components, like because ICE car has like thousands of components, motors and engines, and a combustion engine is so complicated, yet EVs cost much more than a much more complicated ICE engine. If it was like an era where possibly EV started first and then somebody has to design an combustion engine, it would cost like 10 times more, isn't it? Because it is so complicated. What do you think a transition like the solar industry will have? When will it happen, if it ever you think would happen within the automobile?
So there are a lot of factors and a lot of studies, right? So we talk about EV. There's a lot of talk happening on hydrogen also, right? So how hydrogen is going to be cheaper, then how the EV and hydrogen will coexist. That's the topic also. But if you also talk about only from the EV perspective, yes. So EV market is changing every year, I should say. It's very, very dynamic. Indian government is coming with a lot of PLI so that, boosting manufacturers to do a lot of make in India practices. So a lot of companies are working in this direction. But typically with China, what has happened is, even in the solar, for that matter, if you know, there is a all India manufacturing rule for solar panels, right? Still, what is happening is China is way ahead for solar panels making, and they change the technology. They can change the technology overnight, right? So you go for 300 efficiency panel, they'll go for 450, they'll go for 500 efficiency panel. So because everything is ready, they have cities. They have cities, actually, not factories. They have cities who are manufacturing kind of a solar panel, and a lot of technology they have already evolved. So that's the similar thing will happen with EV also. Currently also, even if the solar cost has reduced because of the demand has increased, right? Still people are importing from China, and the manufacturing in India is happening very, very slow for the solar panels. And again, whatever is manufacturing, importing lot of parts from China and then assembling in India. So we really have to figure out, but I am sure that next 5 years the EV cost will come down a bit, for sure.
Thank you very much. And in fact, the title of our panel is Business of Sustainability, Ambition to Action. Hopefully 5 years is the timeline that we have. Arjun, would like to add anything with respect to your take on sustainability and the business that we are today in? Because specifically you are on ground working with companies, helping them. Of course, your model is a very business-driven model where numbers speaks for themselves, but do you have a specific take on how industries are operating, and if you have any advice, what it would be?
I think with respect to a business, I think very, very important to pay attention to the kind of workforce that we have and education of our workforce on climate. I think all roles are important. It's not only a chief sustainability officer that is going to make a difference to a company. I think that understanding and realization is very important. The procurement person, the finance person, the engineering person, like all of them are very important. So we have to drive a culture of sustainability in companies, and I think if they start paying attention to that, driven from the top, that's really going to help. So I think time to be bold and drive that culture throughout businesses starting from the top.
Good. I want to ask you something more as well. You mentioned that you basically are working with companies and investing into the processes of energy efficiency. It can be retrofitting or anything, and the possibly turnaround time for the investment is like 2 years, 3 years. If it is so quickly and if it is so straightforward, why do you think majority of the corporate companies or industries or hospitals are not investing or doing it by themselves? What is stopping?
Great question. It boggles my mind, or at least it used to, but now it doesn't because I've been doing it for 10 years. So I think it requires collaboration and innovation to be able to do it. So why is energy wasted? I think because it's not that easy to save energy. You have to have collaboration between the engineering and the finance and all the decision makers in the company. Starting with the engineering guy, he needs to know how to save energy. That's a basic gap of knowledge and understanding of what technologies already exist in the market. Even if the engineering guy knows this is how I can save energy in my facility, that person has to then take it to finance. Then the finance person, I'll give you an example of a hotel that I was working with. The engineer told the finance head that if you give me 1 crore rupees, I will save 75 lakhs every year for 10 years, guaranteed. The finance person said, if I had 1 crore, I would buy a new sofa for my lobby, okay, and I would put a new chandelier to attract more customers. Why would I put that money into energy efficiency? Right? So I think every business wants to invest in growing its core business, and that it requires a lot of people to come together to actually prioritize time and attention and money towards something which is not core to them. So saving energy is not core for them, right? So I think that's what inspires me, that if you can make it simple to save a lot of energy and also profitable, then that's a business that is core to us, and that's what we can scale.
Yes.
Vamsi,
Very
I'll
well
just,
said.
I'll just
Yes,
add one to what he said, and he's actually correct, right? So typically what is happening in industries, like we work with a lot of supply chain now, and what we can see is, so when there's a project is coming up, we don't work on energy right from that aspect, right? So we go for retrofitting later, 2 years later, 3 years later. So the thing is, the aspect of sustainability has to be there right from the design, and that is not happening because that is no awareness and etc. So that's the bigger problem actually.
Yes.
I'd just like to add to that. So I think when a new facility is built, you have to think about the process of how it's designed, how it's built, and how it's operated. The person who designs it has nothing to do with operations. The person who builds it has nothing to do with operations. The person who operates it is always going to complain that it was not designed properly and it was not built properly, right? So it's a broken chain, completely broken chain between design and operations. And that's why one of our business models is actually, we graduated from just doing retrofits to doing greenfield projects. Now imagine Mahindra is coming up with the 5-star hotel or a new factory. We do design, build, own, operate, maintain of the entire cooling system. And we sell cooling to Mahindra for 12 years. So now our business is to sell cooling. Their business, they don't really care about cooling. They want a comfortable space. They want a particular, so we guarantee that. We build the system, own it, we pay for the energy. And so we are incentivized in that model to make energy as low as possible. Whereas in the traditional model, the design guy would not care. And then you're stuck with an inefficient facility forever.
That's so true, really. It's like, it's like our typical system where we build the road and then dig it up, to lay down the cables and everything. That's so, and also people like to focus on what they know. They do not like to spend time when they are doing a project to understand something new and, integrate into their system and everything. That is so true also for carbon credits, because a number of projects, I was surprised when you said that Apollo has actually got carbon credits from there, because a number of companies, even the companies that we work with, actually do not take action at the right time, and then they realize that they have lost on millions of dollars of opportunity revenue every year. That is the case, right? Once the project is registered, they will keep getting these carbon credits from 21 years to come, and that may be so much more than the project cost itself eventually. And of course, that's what is missed when they are working on in the process. Shruti, anybody has, and you have any comment on the others you want to talk about or ask anything? For the audience, we would be finishing the discussion. If you all want to speak anything, please. Otherwise, we will go for any questions. Anybody would like to ask anything? Yes, please. Would you please introduce yourself and then?
Hello, my name is Raghu. I'm from Bangalore. My question is to Kiran ji. Madam, actually, you put 2 points which is very important. The same points was actually discussed in 2018 Mobility Summit at Chennai, organized by CII. At that time, the industry honkos said that it should be a green to green charging for EV. If we don't achieve that, we will certainly not achieve the objective of using an EV. That's number one. Number two is that even at the same platform, they said, as you said, battery for jayega, no? Battery, when it catches fire, at that time, the fire retardant industry did not have a solution. Even today, I don't think so they have a solution. There's a big gap for 5 years. Why is that is not known? You have an answer.
See, on the renewable energy front, there are a lot of challenges, right? So first challenge, because we spoke to a lot of CPOs, charging companies, etc. So the biggest challenge is we don't have place to put up a solar plant. So say for example, there is a charging infrastructure right out. So we don't have place to put up a solar there. So we can't do that, right? Second point is if you have to go for open access energy. So you put up a solar from somewhere and then take it here. So the process is very much complicated. At this point of time, just now the central has said that you can do open access up to 100 kilowatt, but before that, that policy was not there. And that 100 kilowatt permission is not figured out by various states. and the EV markets currently are the cities, and there is no space. So the renewable thing is not happening, and it will happen eventually, because now the CPOs are figuring out that with 100 kilowatt how to do, because otherwise what happens is for every meter you require a permission to use the open access. Now just imagine, so I have a 1 meter for 2-3 charges, I have to take one permission, I have to do entire that cycle of permission, operation, etc. So it's more headache than using a renewable power, and it doesn't fit into day-to-day operations. So that's the challenge. So we have to simplify the process, work with government very closely to simplify the process. So that's the challenge happening there. On the battery front, see, there is lot of, and you're right, there are lot of solution happening. Today, if you see and if you visit any service center, they are not skilled enough to understand how to service a battery, say for example, right? So lot of things have happened on the safety of the battery. So when we are manufacturing the battery packs, or say for example for born electric EV, when we are manufacturing the platform, etc. So there are a lot of safety precaution and everything which have taken, and that has been figured out. But as I mentioned, the servicing remains a challenge. And what we are doing currently, we are checking globally how exactly in a servicing center in Europe and US, etc., how they are servicing the batteries, etc. So we are learning from them, and we have our own practices that we have established. We are learning, benchmarking, and we are trying to see how we want to be how the battery servicing should be done. Also, another aspect we are trying to see is every time there's a possibility that the car cannot go to the service center, right? So you also need to have a facility for the mobile service center. So how that can be worked out. So there are different models we are trying now, considering the EVs obviously new. So it will again take some time, but yeah, so the work is happening there.
Yes.
My name is Arpit. I'm from Jaipur. My question is to Shruti ma'am. So, with respect to C40 cities climate initiative, how do you take care or empower the urban poor? I feel they are often secluded. They come from outside village area to cities to earn money, but they are secluded from their basic amenities. They used to provide. City used to provide the households in the areas like low-lying area, and they are often kept away from the power grid. Not generalizing, but I have seen this. So, are smart cities or any city accessible to only those who can afford or smart enough?
Very interesting question really. I'm impressed.
So, it's such a fundamental question of the issues that cities face, right? And it's a complex one to solve and to respond to. But I can tell you that what we do when we are working with cities is, we totally, our premise is that climate change is going to impact the vulnerable the most, right? Because if you're simply by the example that you gave, that low-lying areas, they tend to flood more, and we saw some, like in Bangalore, it really causes a lot of havoc when it happens. The recent cyclone that happened in Chennai, it impacts, the basic services, even their ability to earn a living, right? Because they're day wage laborers, and heat, for example, has been causing the most impact to the people who are working outdoors, right? Which is almost 50 to 60% of India's labor workforce, right? So our mandate and goal and our vision is that when we work with cities on climate, we ensure that it has to be an equitable climate action plan where we find mechanisms of mapping the vulnerable population and the impacts they're going to face with the risks, and what measures the city can take to mitigate those risks. And also we work with NGOs and non-profits and organizations that are representing some of these population to come to be a part of the stakeholder consultation. So every single climate action plan that we have done, not only in India but globally, has been inclusive. And we really, for us, inclusivity is the fundamental way the cities can address climate change. But I don't know if it can, it's such a complex issue, right? I think it requires every stakeholder to play a role, and city, of course, the city government is one of them. But from our side, we're completely committed, and we believe that you cannot solve the climate crisis without, ensuring that everyone is included in that discussion.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Shruti. Thank you very much, and of course, thank you for the answer as well. There's a very important question. Really, it is. See, smart cities, and I have very strong opinions about this. The way we are, our development is happening, and there is definitely no other way that there is a big gap between the poor and the rich, and also the income disparity is really, really huge. It makes me think back in the day, cities and majority of the places were extremely inclusive, I would say. Why I am saying inclusive is because the public transportation and number of other things were very, very affordable for everyone who used to travel. In many others way, there were not so many cars. Transportation was easy for everybody. This has changed in the more recent years, really, because Delhi is different. If you go to Bangalore, the metro fares are really high. I don't think that somebody in a working class who possibly is working hard to make ends meet can afford something which is so basic like a metro ride. And this possibly should be at the center when we are talking about smart cities or anything related. So yeah, I'm sure that would be one of the very, very important things on top of the agenda. I'm sure. I'm not saying that C40 possibly would not have thought about it, but this is particularly for countries like India. Whenever I see some of the things being priced so high, it doesn't make any sense. This is not for India. I just think this way, that some of the things in India are not meant for India, possibly in the more recent years after COVID. And the way we are going to develop our cities would define whether we are able to give equal opportunities or not. And that is a big part. That is a big part of ESG. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. And this is the end of our panel. Thank you for joining. Thank you, everybody.